And have Shabbos stuff.
Sorry?
Did not have Shabbos stuff in the last cycle.
Interesting. I guess it must have been whatever. All right, thank you, Mashi. All right, to both say good morning, a gotavach, a great suchos baruch Hashem, to be able to begin the week learning Yerushalayim HaKodesh. Today's daf is Samech Ches 68. 68, our shir this morning is dedicated by our annual Talmud Torah sponsor, the Tilsa Mishpacha of Eretz Yisrael, for dedicating all the Shimon Roshos this year. As a zechus, thank you, Sai, thank you. As a zechus for Besoros Tovos for all of Am Yisrael. Halavai, we should be Zochem Eretz Hashem. Should be a week of Mel and Karen Ram in honor of Le'ili Nishmas Mordechai ben Yitzchak. We hope that on the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Hashem will have an aliyah and the family in Nechama. Because also we hope that this is a week in Meretz Hashem in which more of our hostages come home, our holy soldiers are successful. B'chol ma'aseh yedehem. We should just be zochem Meretz Hashem to brachos, yeshuas, and nechamas for all of Klal Yisrael. Well, with that, let us begin. Today's daf is Samech Ches 68. We are picking up in Meretz Hashem actually at the top of Samech Ches 68. So the Gemara quotes the section from Rabbi Akiva. So remember again, Rabbi Akiva mentioned in the Mishnah about the collection of kishuim, the collection of cucumbers or gourds. And Rabbi Akiva said in the Mishnah, Shnaim loket kishuin, echad loket pater, ve'echad loket chayiv. Sometimes someone could go ahead and collect cucumbers, right? Harvest cucumbers on Shabbos. Sometimes the person could be chayiv, sometimes the person could be pater. So the Mishnah said, what does that mean? So if a person actually harvests the cucumbers, and he be chayiv for Chilul Shabbos, but if he engages in an act of illusion, so then he would be pater. So now the Gemara is going to talk about that a little bit. So the Gemara says, Vaha, top of Samech 68a, Vaha, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yoshua Gamerla. Did Rabbi Akiva learn this halacha from Rabbi Yoshua? No, Vatanya says this is really an incredible story. Vatanya, the Gemara tells the story. Kishachala Rabbi Eliezer, Nichnusu Rabbi Akiva v'chaver levaklo. When Rabbi Eliezer became ill, so Rabbi Akiva and his other rabbanim, his other companions, not companions, what's the word? Colleagues. Thank you. His colleagues came to visit Rabbi Eliezer. And I will say, now you're going to see the context of this story in just a little bit, and it's quite dramatic. Hu Yoshe b'kinov shalom v'yoshe mitraklin. So Rabbi Eliezer was like in his bed. He was very ill, deathly ill, about to die, as we'll see in just a moment. And he was like under his canopy. So he was in his bed under a canopy, and Rabbi Akiva and the other Rabbanim were outside. Literally, traklin means like in an antechamber. So they were visiting with him in an antechamber, the hallway. Va'osa yom erev Shabbos haya, and it was erev Shabbos. It was Friday afternoon. So what happened? B'nichnas horkinus b'no lachlotz tfilof. So Horkinus, so this is Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer's son Horkinus. Now, interestingly enough, this was Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkinus. He had a son who he named after his father, Horkinus. Again, if we have time, we'll talk a little bit more about Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkinus, who himself was a disciple of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Okay, so what happened? So his son Horkinus went in to remove his tefillin. So again, remember, Rabbi Eliezer, the father, very ill. Son comes in Erev Shabbos to remove his father's tefillin. Shabbos is about to start. So Ga'ar bo v'yatza ben Azifa. Rabbi Eliezer started yelling at his son. Started yelling at him, and literally again rebuked him, and Horkinus left the room. Amr lahen l'chaveirav kimeduma ani shedaito shel abba nitrafa. So Horkinus sees the other Rabbanim who are there, ostensibly to be Mevakir Chola, to visit the sick, to visit Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkinus. And Horkinus, the son, says, it would appear that my father is not in a proper mental state. Right? After chasing me out of the room like this, after rebuking me, it would appear that my father is not in a proper mental state. So what happens? Eliezer hears this, and he says, Amar lahen, daito v'das imo nitrafa. So Rabbi Eliezer says, I'm fine, I'm not the problem, but rather, again, it's my son Horkinus and his mother, my wife, who are the ones who are mentally not clear, lacking mental clarity. Why? Heich manichen isur skila va'oskin be'isur shvus. Because literally translated, how could it be that they are not careful with an isur skila, and they're worried about, again, my tefillin? So in other words, what's happening over here? So interestingly enough, so Rabbi Eliezer is going ahead and rebuking his son, and his wife, in other words, Rabbi Eliezer's wife, for not properly preparing for Shabbos. That he felt that they were not properly prepared for Shabbos, and because they're not properly prepared for Shabbos, there's a real concern that Chas v'Shalom they come to Machal Shabbos, so they're not worried about preparing for Shabbos, and instead they're focused on taking my tefillin off. So Eliezer was things like this. Wearing tefillin on Shabbos, so worst case scenario, maybe you're dealing with an Isser D'Rabbanan. But preparing on Shabbos, that could be a serious Isser D'Oraisa. So take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says, Isser Skila, it's the third short line. Hadlokas Haner, V'hatmonas Chamin, V'oskin B'davar She'eno Ela Isser Shvos. Demaniach tefillin b'Shabbos in kan. The Maniach Tefillin b'Shabbos in kan Isser Malacha, V'afilu Yetzer Sh'sarabim Ta'derach Maboshu. So apparently what Rabbi Eliezer was upset about was he felt that his son and his wife had not properly prepared for Shabbos. So he felt you're focusing on all the wrong things. You're focusing on getting my tefillin off. Okay, so what's the worst case scenario? If I go ahead and I wear tefillin on Shabbos, so what? So what? Okay, at most it's an Isser D'Rabbanan. So better to go ahead and don't worry about the Isser D'Rabbanan, worry about preparing for Shabbos properly. So we'll say, so what's the pshat? So the Maharsha brings down over the Maharsha says, you're right, they had delayed in preparing for Shabbos. Why? Because they were caring for their father. Right? Because they were caring for Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer, and again, Rabbi Eliezer, we'll see, is a strong personality. Very strong personality. So the Maisa, again, he's rebuking his son for not probably preparing for Shabbos. So now at this point in time, the Rabbanim realized that Rabbi Eliezer was of sound mind, right? That he was fine. He was of sound mind. He was totally with it. When the other Rabbanim realize this, so they come in to be Mavaker Chola. V'yashu lefanav berichok dalet amos. And they sit 4 amos away from Rabbi Eliezer. And I will say now, what's happening over here? So now where the story begins to really take form. If you look at Rashi says, berichok arba amos, mipnei hanidui sheberchu b'machlokes tanor shalachnai b'metzia. But remember again, this is the famous story of Tanur Shalachnoi. Tanur Shalachnoi, but remember again, this was the famous fallout between Rabbi Eliezer and the rabbinic community. There was a big machlokes about, again, an oven, right? Literally a Tanur Shalachnoi, an oven made up of multiple parts, and there was a major machlokes about the ritual status. Tuman Tara. So again, the entire rabbinic community paskin one way, Rabbi Eliezer paskin a different way. Rabbi Eliezer would not back down from his opinion. As a result, he was put in cherem. He was excommunicated. Nidui. He was put in cherem. Now, interestingly enough, the halacha is that when someone is in cherem, you're not even allowed to come within dalet amos, 6 feet of them. So they're coming now to go ahead and be Mevaker Chola. Now, the truth is they're not really coming to be Mevaker Chola. What they're really coming to do is they're coming to glean any additional Torah knowledge that they can from Rabbi Eliezer. But they have to keep a distance from him because at the end of the day, he's still in excommunication. That's why they're not coming to his bedside. They're keeping a distance of Dalet Amos. Rabbi Eliezer, again, even on his deathbed, was not retracting his halachic position. And therefore, again, they come a distance. Amar Lahem. So Rabbi Eliezer says to them, there's so much just about this entire story and about Rabbi Eliezer himself. Sometimes in life, it's good to stand your ground and it's good to keep your shittas and your opinions. But if the whole world is against you, right? Again, if chances are you have to do a self-check and you may be wrong. Now, that's not always true. For example, the world is against us, Klal Yisrael, right? The world is against Klal Yisrael, and yet again, we know that we do not back down from who and what we are. But within Klal Yisrael itself, if you're alone on the island and everyone else says one thing, right, and you're holding something else, chances are you're wrong. And chances are you have to have enough humility and enough inner sense to be able to understand that maybe it's kedai to revisit my shitas, my hashkafas, my halachas, my life stances. But Rabbi Eliezer would not back down. He would not back down. So what ends up happening? So the Gemara says, Amar Lama Basam. So Rabbi Eliezer says to Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Akiva's chaver, and why did you guys come? Amar Lo, Amru Lo, Lilmod Torah Banu. Rabbi, we came to learn Torah. Both you have to understand something. We've mentioned this many times. Once upon a time, Torah Shebal Peh was Bal Peh. Right? The oral tradition was Mamish Bal Peh, which means that when a Rebbe died, what happened? Any Torah he had that he did not share went with him to the grave. which is why so often in Gemara you find that when a great sage is on his deathbed, his Talmidim are circling the bed because they're trying to just extract whatever last-minute Torah they have the ability to do. So now, Rabbi Eliezer was in Cherem, but he's about to die. So they're trying to get, so they come, Rabbi Akiva says, Rebbe, we're here to learn Torah. Give us whatever you can before you die. This is incredible Gemara. So why haven't you come until now? Right? Rabbi says, no, so no, where have you been this entire time? Why are you only coming now? Amrullah, they said to him, La haya lanu pnai. Wow, we didn't have enough time. We didn't have time. We got busy. I'm not supposed to listen to this. Amrullah, so Rabbi says back to them, Tamia ani em yamusu misas atzmon. I wonder about you guys if you will die a natural death. In other words, Rabbi Eliezer saw prophetically that these individuals, unfortunately, would meet a very bitter end. Again, Rabbi Akiva, we know again, and all of these other Rabbanim were unfortunately killed by the Romans. So Rabbi Eliezer says prophetically, I see that unfortunately you're going to meet a very difficult end. Amar Rabbi Akiva, Shalimahu. Rabbi Akiva specifically asks Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi, what do you see about my future? Amar lo shalcha kasha mishalahen. Your end is even more difficult. Is even more difficult than anyone else. And I will say, so just there's a lot of emotion involved in this Gemara as well. Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus feeling that he was, ostracized from the community, which he was. But again, because of his own decisions, and his own unwillingness to back down. I will say that this exchange is so incredibly profound, right? You have Rabbi Eliezer asking the Rabbanim, Chevra, why haven't you come to me until now? And they said, oh, we didn't have time. And Rabbi Eliezer says, I just want to tell you, if you live a life where you don't have time, he says, Tamia ani im yamusu misas atzman. Then I would be shocked if the only death you experience in this world, the way you could read that phrase is, Tamiani, I would be shocked, im yamusu misas atzman. If you only die a regular death. What does that mean, I was saying? People go through life, and we have plenty of opportunities. But how do we justify not taking our opportunities, not taking advantage of our opportunities? Not enough time. Every single time you lose out on an opportunity because you quote-unquote don't have enough time, that's a quasi-death. What is death? Death represents a certain finality. When a person dies, that's it. When you fail to take advantage of your life opportunities, we know how this works. Often we don't take advantage of our life opportunities. Why? Because we convince ourselves, that's what? I'll get to it later. But we know that's not how life works. Often when you don't take advantage of a life opportunity, that opportunity evaporates. Now there may be other opportunities down the road, but the ones you miss are the ones you miss, and more often than not, you cannot regain them. So Rabbi Eliezer perhaps is saying to the other Rabbanim, you tell me you don't have time. For people who live a life where their common refrain is, I don't have time, just understand every time you don't have time and you pass up on a life opportunity, you're killing that opportunity. And not like the expression like, I'm killing it, like the good killing it, right? Not like that one, right? But like, you've lost out on that. And that ultimately, again, that is a door that shuts, and once it shuts, you cannot reopen it. So I will say, this is perhaps one of the most important and profound lessons. So many of us, we go through life, and there's opportunities, whether it's opportunities for tefillah b'tzibor, it's opportunities for learning, it's opportunities for chavrusa, it's opportunities for chesed, it's opportunities to build our shalom bayis. And what ends up happening? I'm too busy, or I'm too tired, or I'm too this, or I'm too that. Just understand, every single time you pass up on a life opportunity because I quote unquote don't have time, that opportunity has just died right in front of you. And there's no tchias hamesim for life opportunities. There may be other ones, but once the opportunity dies, it's dead and gone to you forever. Overwhelming Gemara. So what happens? So Rabbi will say, now Rabbi Eliezer is about to die. Rabbi Eliezer himself is about to die. What does he do? Natal shteis ra'osav v'niach al libo. So Rabbi will say, this is a profound Gemara. Rabbi Eliezer takes his two arms and literally almost like he crosses it against his chest. Amar, oy lachem shteis ra'osai, shen kishtei sifrei Torah sheniglalin. He said, woe to these arms. that are like two Sifrei Torah that are rolled up. So the imagery is very profound. He looked at his arms like the two columns of a Sefer Torah. He's crossing it over his chest. And he's saying, woe to these Sifrei Torah that are rolled. Now, Rashi points out when a Sefer Torah is rolled, closed, you can't see the letters. What Rabbi Eliezer is lamenting, what he's truly lamenting, is this idea of unactualized potential. I had all of this, right? I had this Sefer Torah. I had all of this in me, and yet my Sefer Torah remained closed. You know, both say, it's such an overwhelming idea that when a person leaves this world, sometimes the thing that gives them the greatest amount of people say, you know what, I want to tell you something. We know this. You know, when a person's on their deathbed, no one ever says, oh, you know what? What about all the places I wanted to vacation in and I never got to? Right? Oh, Cancun was waiting for me and Paris was waiting for me. And this, no one ever on their deathbed laments the vacations they didn't take. No, at least I don't think so. At least not thinking people don't do that. What do people lament on their deathbed? They lament the opportunity they had to actualize their potential and failed to do so. Because that potential goes with me to the grave. And that's what Rabbi Eliezer is lamenting. These arms, this Sefer Torah was rolled up. What good is a rolled Sefer Torah? What good is a rolled Sefer Torah? What can you do with a rolled Sefer Torah? You could kiss it, you could hold it, but you can't learn from it because you can't see anything. So Rabbi Eliezer is referring to himself as that rolled Sefer Torah. So much unactualized potential. Harbe Torah lamarati v'harbe Torah limarati. I learned so much and I taught so much. Now, I will say it's interesting, by the way. So how does that shtim? He just said that he's like a rolled Sefer Torah, which means he can't see the print. But then he says, I learned so much and I taught so much. Rabbi Eliezer is saying something so profound. Yes, I did a lot in life. I learned a lot of Torah and I taught a lot of Torah. But I could have done so much more. I could have been so much more. And that is the greatest existential pain that a person could face when they are at the end of the journey of life. I could have done more. I could have been more. I could have learned more. I could have taught more. I could have accomplished so much more. He goes on, he says, I learned so much from my Rebbeim, but the truth is, I didn't take more than them than like a dog takes when it's lapping water from the sea. Right? If a dog goes over to the river and starts drinking water, he doesn't diminish the water. So too, again, I learned from my Rebbeim, but there was so much more I could have learned. I'm like a dog drinking the water from the river. I drank, but there was still so much more to drink. Harbe Torah limarati v'lo chesuni talmida ela kimekachal b'shvo feres. I taught so much Torah, but my students didn't take anything more from me from like a tube, from like an applicator. In other words, it's the same idea that I took so much from my Rebbeim, but it was like a drop in the ocean. I gave so much to my students, but it was just a drop in the ocean. V'lo od, not only that, ella, so again, just to understand over here, like what's unfolding over here. Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus lamenting an unfulfilled life, unless you think he didn't accomplish. He's like, I learned a lot, I taught a lot, but I could have done so much more. My personalistic Sefer Torah is rolled up. You can't see the print, and I go to the grave with the pain of knowing that I could have been more, that my life could have been more. He goes on, he says, V'lo ela shani shona shlosh mios halachos bebaheres azah, v'lo haya adam sheshaluni bahen davar me'olam. He said, furthermore, I know 300 halachos with the baheres azah. What's Baheres Azah? So Baheres is a type of tsaras. Azah means bright. So what Rabbi Eliezer was saying is, I even have very specific knowledge with a specific type of tsaras, and no one ever asked me about it. V'lo od ela sheni shona shlosh mios halachos, v'armilei shloshes alafim halachos, benetias kishuin, v'lo haya adam shalani bahem davar me'olam, chutz me'akiva ben Yosef. And I know 300 halachos. Some say 3,000 halachos. When it comes to cucumbers, there's a lot of halachos when it comes to cucumbers. We'll see what that means in just a moment. And no one ever asked me anything except Rabbi Akiva. He called him Akiva ben Yosef. No one ever asked me anything except Akiva ben Yosef. We'll come to just a second. Why? What's the story of Rabbi Akiva and Eliezer ben Horkanus and cucumbers? Listen to this. Pam achos ani v'hu mahalchin ayinu b'derech. So Rabbi Elazar ben Horkanus tells the story. He says, one time, Rabbi Akiva and I were walking on the road. Amrli, and Rabbi Akiva said to me, Rabbi, lamdeni benetios kishuin. Teach me about the halachos of sorcery when it comes to cucumbers. First white line, Amarti davar echad. So Rabbi Elazar ben Horkanus said, I said one word, in other words, a sorceric word. I said one word of kishuf, nismala kolasa de kishuin, and the entire field filled with cucumbers. So we'll say it's pretty incredible. We're going to obviously, Gemara is going to talk about how exactly is it permitted that Rabbi Elazar ben Horkanus is engaging in kishuf, is engaging in sorcery. Again, we'll discuss that. But he said, I said one word, and the entire field filled with cucumbers. Amrli Rabbi limaratani nitiyasan, limaratani akirasan. So Rabbi taught me how to plant cucumbers with sorcery. Tell me how to harvest it. So amarti davar echad niskapsu kulun lamakom echad. I said one word. And all of the cucumbers were piled in one area of the field. Incredible. Amrulo. So we'll say, so again, that, just to understand, that's the whole point of this story, right? Because remember, in the Mishnah, Rabbi Akiva quoted in the name of Rabbi Yoshua about the halachos of cucumbers when it comes to sorcery. The Gemara was asking, did Rabbi Akiva learn this from Rabbi Yoshua? It seems from the story that Rabbi Akiva actually learned this from Rabbi Eliezer. That's the whole point of this story. We're going to go back to that in just a moment. So we'll say, so at this point in time, now the Gemara jumps back. The other Rabbanim who are coming to visit Rabbi Eliezer see that he's holding of sound mind. So therefore they want to use this opportunity to ask him a variety of questions. Amrullah, they said to Rabbi Eliezer, HaKador v'ha'amos v'ha'kamiyah utzrar hamargalios u'mishkoles ketana mahu. So there, both say, interestingly enough, they asked Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus a question regarding Tumah and Tara. So literally, again, a ball, or Rashi says over here, a weight, kamiyah is an amulet, tzra margolios, a pouch for gems, or mishkola, or a weight. So we'll say these are all things Rashi points out over here that are made from leather and filled with something else. So the Gemara says, the shaila is, they were asking Rabbi Eliezer a Tumah and Tara question. Again, Rabbi Elazar ben Horkanus gives them the halachos of Tumah and Tara. Fine. Minal sha'al gabia imos mahu. So then they ask, what is the halacha concerning a shoe that is still on its form? In other words, we'll say, let's say you have a shoe and the shoe is being fashioned, it's still on the form, it's not complete. What's its halacha regarding Tumah and Tara? Amar lahen hu tahar. Ultimately, again, it's tar. Why? Because it's not a completed kli. That's what Rabbi Elazar ben Horkanus said. And the Gemara says, "V'yatsa nishmasal b'tara." The last word that Rabbi Elazar ben Horkanus said, the last word he said was tahar, was pure. Those were the last words out of his mouth. Amar Rabbi Yeshua aragla v'amar hutra haneder, hutra haneder. Rabbi Yeshua stood up and he said that ultimately, again, we release Rabbi Eliezer from the excommunication. So we'll say, so they lifted, the Rabbanim assembled, lifted the excommunication from Rabbi Elazar ben Horkanus after he passed away. Incredible. That's what it means. Hutar haneder, hutar haneder. So the Gemara says as follows. Lamasi Shabbos. Now again, so Rabbi Elazar ben Horkanus died. And I'm going to say, incredibly enough, the last thing that he said when he died was tahar. That was his last word. So Lamasi Shabbos. Pagabo Rabbi Akiva min Kesari lelud. I'm sorry, Rabbi Akiva. So we'll say, so now, remember, when did this story happen? This whole story happened on Friday. Because remember, again, that's how the whole thing started, that his son Horkanus came in to remove his tefillin. It was Erev Shabbos. So the Levaya was on Matzah Shabbos. It was on Matzah Shabbos. Rabbi Akiva, so apparently, it must be, according to this story, Rabbi Akiva must have left before Rabbi Eliezer died. And Rabbi Akiva, therefore, runs into the funeral procession on Matzah Shabbos. And Rabbi Akiva accompanies the procession, from Caesarea to Lud. Hayamaka bivsaro ad shedamu shoses la'aretz. So literally, Rabbi Akiva was striking himself until he started to bleed. So Tosas points out over here, Tosas says that this Rabbi Akiva wasn't lacerating himself over the death of Rabbi Eliezer. Instead, what he was doing was, he was mourning the loss of Torah. Because the halacha is, you're not allowed to lacerate yourself over mourning for the dead. He wasn't lacerating himself mourning for the dead. Rather, again, he could not take the pain of all the Torah that was lost with the death of Rabbi Eliezer himself. Va'amar Avi Rechav Yisrael Parashav. So ultimately, again, he said the pasuk that actually Elisha said about Eliyahu, and Eliyahu Hanavi died. Rechav, right? He said to him, he said, Avi, my father, Rechav Yisrael Parashav. Ultimately, again, chariot of Israel and its riders. Harbe Ma'os. So again, he referred. It's very beautiful. He referred to Eliezer as his father. And as a chariot, right? Just like the chariot gets the rider from location A to location B, Rabbi Eliezer was someone who was moving Klal Yisrael forward at every junction. Look, Rabbi Akiva says, Harbe ma'os yeshli ve'en li shulchani lahartzosan. Ultimately, again, I have so much money, right? I have all these coins, but I have no money changer, right? No money changer to show me how to properly utilize them. We'll say this is an incredible yesod. We'll say sometimes, the Mishnah tells us, right? Aseh lecha Rav, all of us in life, right? We need a Rebbe, all of us. And by the way, a Rebbe doesn't even have to be like a rabbi. A Rebbe just means in life you need someone. We all need someone who could help us with perspective. Because a lot of times I have all the stuff I need. I just don't know exactly how to arrange it in a way so as to maximize my personalistic success. Right? It's interesting. Rabbi Akiva is not saying, if you notice, what does he say? He says, I have so much money, but I don't have a money changer. What does a money changer do? I guess this Talmudic money changer, you bring all of your coins, right? And then what would the money changer say? Here's what you should do. Exchange this for this. Put this over here. Do this with this. The money changer would show you how to take everything that you have and maximize what you have for ultimate profit and ultimate results. Rabbi Akiva was saying like this, I need Rabbi Eliezer, not because I need his knowledge. I have the knowledge, but he helps me take all of the knowledge and figure out how to best maximize. I will say, sometimes in life, our greatest challenge is not knowing how to utilize the brachos that we have. I have so much, but I need to figure out how do I optimize it, right? Isn't it interesting? Especially I find this a lot, that we live in an age where it used to be you needed a Rebbe for information. Right? You need a Rebbe for information. And I will say the truth is, today, do you need a Rebbe for information? Not really, right? You could get the 8-minute daf, the 8-second daf, the 25-second daf, right? Half a daf, part of a daf, a whole daf, right? You could, right? And you can get in any medium you want. You do not need a Rebbe for information. You don't. You could get information however you get information. What a Rebbe does for us, for all of us, there's not one of us here who doesn't need someone like this. And it doesn't be one person, it can be multiple people. Is, okay, so I get my information. How do I use it? How do I organize it? How do I set myself up in a life framework so I could be successful? And I feel that sometimes this is one of the biggest challenges of our dar, right? Because it's interesting, there's all the yomis, right? And it's cute. You see people with a stack, right? Kitzer, Mishnah, Tetzashtay, Mikra, and what happens? And they're doing daf, and they're doing the Mishnah, and they're doing the Kitzer, and they're doing everything simultaneously. You can ask them 5 minutes later, what do you remember? The answer is 0, right? But I'm going through my whole list of stuff. I got everything. Because a lot of times, the mistakes we make in life is, we're absorbing all the information. Where do I put it? What do I do with it? Sometimes more is less, sometimes less is more. Sometimes I should be focusing on certain things and not doing everything. Sometimes I should be doing everything and focusing. Right, base medrash, home, chavrusa, all these things. And it's everything. Tzedakah, shalom bayis. I have all the coins. I have everything. But how do I arrange it? And it's incredible. That's what Rabbi Akiva was lamenting. I don't need Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkinus for information. I have the information, but what I do with it, how do I organize it? How do I set myself up for success in life? That's what I need my Rebbe for. It's amazing. And when Rabbi Akiva lost that, he loses Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkinus, he's overwhelmed. Who is going to help me make Seder in my life? Who's going to help me create a vision and a way forward and a process and a framework? Who's going to help me with that? And you can see again, he's overwhelmed by this loss. It's incredible. So the Gemara goes right there. So by the way, Full circle, full circle. What do you see from here? Rabbi Akiva didn't gain his cucumber knowledge from Rabbi Shimon. Who did he gain it from? Rabbi Eliezer. Amar Rabbi Eliezer Gamra Gemara. I'm sorry, Amar Rabbi Eliezer Gamra. To which the Gemara says, you're right. Gamra Rabbi Eliezer v'lo savra. Hadar Gamra Rabbi Yeshua v'azbra nihile. So this is interesting. I was saying. Originally he learned from Rabbi Eliezer, or Rabbi Eliezer, I should say, but Allah Alamaisi didn't understand it, and then he learned it again from Rabbi Yeshua, and this time he understood it. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara goes weiter. Now, both say. By the way, the Gemara says, "Whoa! Can we hold up here for just a second? How exactly is Rabbi Eliezer allowed to go ahead and use sorcery to go ahead and make a field appear with cucumbers and then make them collective? Isn't that kishuf? Isn't that kishuf? To which the Gemara says, "Vanan tanan ha'osa ma'aseh chayiv lehislamit." Right? Ha'osa ma'aseh chayiv. So ultimately, how you have to do this? Isn't that an isur d'oraisa to engage in kishuf? To which the Gemara says, "No, lehislamit shiny." I will say, sometimes, again, especially someone like Rabbi Eliezer, has to understand how things work in order to be able to paskin it, right? So therefore, he had to learn it. He had to learn it in order to understand it. Or I should say, he had to learn it in order to be able to. He had to understand it in order to be able to paskin. Shailas about it. Amar Mar lo silmod lasos. Torah tells us, do not learn in order to replicate or in order to mimic that which the nations of the world do. Lasos i'ata lamad. So ultimately, again, you can't learn in order to go ahead and mimic that which the nations of the world do. Aval ata lamid lahavin ulahoros. So we'll say, so ultimately, again, halacha lamaisa, a person is not allowed to learn sorcery or any other, for that matter, or anything else, in order to do it for themselves. But if a person needs to learn it in order to understand, in order to teach it, that's where now again, be careful with what you do with this. Like, you know what? Listen, it's important to understand arayas. I don't mean the ground meat and the pita, right? In other words, like, right, important to understand it, right? I need to understand some mamish. I have to become proficient. No, calm down, right? What it means is like this: that somebody who needs to paskin halachas needs to understand the mechanics of things, right? You can't paskin if you don't understand it. So Rabbi Eliezer, who needed to paskin on different situations regarding kishuf, needed to understand how it was working. And that's why he taught it to Rabbi Akiva, not for the purpose of going ahead and performing sorcery chas v'shalom, but for the point ultimately again of going ahead and understanding the dynamic of these things. Okay, but I'll just point out something amazing. Actually, all right, we'll save it for later. Hadron alach aramisol. So we'll say mazel tov. Mazel tov. End of the parak. Shkoyach. Michael Kaplan's first parak in Shas. Mazel tov. Mazel tov. Mazel tov. Incredible. Incredible. Miras Hashem, the first of many. The first of many. Let's say on base. All right, so Michael, it's a short-lived celebration. Let's go. All right, it says that's how we do it. No, right? Good. Shkoyach. Now move on. Let's say Samech Chesed. By the way, that's the greatest metaphor for life, right? Metaphor for life. You know, in the Welt, when you go ahead and you accomplish something, you see this, right? Like you win a Super Bowl. Like, oh, what are you going to do now? Right? And there's understanding that, like, okay, now you have a break. Now you can this. In Yiddishkeit, when you go ahead and you have a dramatic accomplishment, what do? Next moment, move on, right? Give yourself a shkoyach, 5 seconds, appreciate the accomplishment, and then move on to whatever is next. So what says here we go. Samech Chesed 68b. Ben Sorer Umora. So now this is our next parak. So remember again, just kind of like a quick overview. Ben Sorer Umora is the rebellious son. So this is ultimately, again, remember, the child, he's not a child, he's an adult, a legal adult, we'll see, who steals money from his parents in order to go ahead and purchase meat and wine. So this is a fascinating set of halachas, which we'll have to delve into a little bit. And the Torah says that Ben Sorer Umora is executed. Now, interestingly enough, at first glance, it doesn't really feel that the crime really is that severe that it should warrant execution. So what we'll see, of course, is that a Ben Sorer Umora is really executed not as much for what he did, but for what we're concerned he's going to become. and he represents a profound threat to the community, and therefore Allah L'maisa we execute him before he can become an actual threat. Now again, which is hashkafically problematic, doesn't seem to make all that much sense. We're going to delve into all of this, but often like happens with halacha, let's begin first with some of the mechanistic details. So Ben Sora Mora, Me'emasa Nasa Ben Sora Mora, when could a child become Ben Sora Mora, right? From what age? Mishayavi Shtei Sa'aras, Va'ad Sheyakiv Zakon. So literally again, from the time that he brings 2 hairs, which is the sign of physical maturation, Achiyakif Hazaka. Now, that literally sounds like until his beard fills out. Now, the Mishnah just says, by the way, Hatachton V'lo Elyon. It's actually a metaphor, right? It doesn't mean his face beard, but rather, again, it means physical maturation. Right? The Gemara says, Ella, Shedibru Chacham B'lashon Nikiyah. Chazal spoke in a cleaner way, right? So they didn't want to be explicit that this refers ultimately again to pubic hairs, right? They didn't want to be explicit like that. So therefore they said it in a little bit of in a nicer way. Shneimar Kia leish ben v'lo bas. The pasuk says if a man will have a rebellious son, first of all it's a son and not a daughter. Interestingly enough, there's no bas sorer umora, right? There's no female equivalent, right? Furthermore, ben v'lo ish. Furthermore, again, it's a ben and not a man. And again, we'll discuss exactly what that means as well. Ben v'lo ish. Katan, pater shelo balech la mitzvos. And a katan is pater, right? Because ultimately, again, a katan has not yet come to the chiyuv of mitzvos. Okay? So therefore, again, we'll say that's the introduction of Ben Sora Mora. Tushki Gemara says, 1 second. Katan minal and the pater. So from where do we know that a katan, that a child ultimately again is pater, that child can't become a Ben Sora Mora? Kediktani taimo shalaba lichlal mitzvahs. What the Mishnah said, because a katan hasn't yet come to the responsibility of mitzvahs, and therefore again a katan is going to be pater. To which the Gemara says, Visu heicha ashkechan the anash akasov dahachi dacha libay kralim. If Trace says, 1 second. It sounds like what the Gemara is saying over here is the Gemara needs an explicit teaching to teach me that a katan is not subject to halachas of Ben Sora Mora. But that's obvious. Why would we ever think that a katan is subject to the halachas of Ben Sora Mora? In general, a katan is always exempt from everything. So why would I need a specific pasuk to teach me that a katan is exempt? To which the Gemara says, Anan hachi kamina. This is what I mean to say. Atu ben Sora Mora al chet o neherag, Hashem sofo neherag. Shabbos says we're going to discuss a Ben Sora Mora. Why is he executed? He's not really executed for what he has done, right? Because if you think about it, we haven't gotten into it yet, but what has Ben Sora Mora done? What has he done? He stole money. And he bought meat and he drank wine. Not good. Right, not good, but certainly not an executable offense. Right, you can't say. So why is he executed? He's executed because we're concerned of what he's going to become. That's what we're concerned about. We're concerned that maybe that Lamaisa, if he's exhibiting these type of behaviors as a child, we are concerned about the type of menace to society that he is going to become when he gets older. So the Gemara says, "V'kevan da'al sofo nerag afilu katanami." I might have thought that since we kill him for what he's going to become, maybe these halachos should apply even if he's a katan. Right? If Ben Sora Mora is not as much about what he is, but rather about what he's going to become, so maybe we should execute even a katan for exhibiting this type of early stage egregious behavior. Kamash Malano. Kamash, the Mishnah teaches us that halacha l'maisa, a katan is not held accountable for his actions, and a katan is always going to be pater. Va'od ben v'lo ish. Va'od ben v'lo ish katan mashma. So furthermore, again, I will say the halach. The Gemara says ben v'lo ish. As we're going to see the halach. So what this means is ben v'lo ish means can't mean a katan because a katan in general is not held accountable. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Damakra v'chiyel ish ben. Pasuk says if a man will go ahead and have a son, ben hasamuch l'gvuraso shel ish, who becomes a ben Sora Mora, a ben who is just recently entered into manhood. So this is interesting, by the way, that a Ben Sora Mora has to be an adult, but again, he's a recently bar mitzvah adult. In other words, he has to be a Ben hasamuch ish. He became an ish recently, but he's still a Ben. So he is a young ish who has just relatively recently entered into Jewish adulthood. Incredible. Let's just go a little bit weiter. V'ad sheyakiv zakan atachton. So Tani Rabbi Chia ad sheyakiv atara. So we'll say, so again, remember, all of this discussion about zakan, about a beard, is a euphemism, not for his face beard, but rather, again, about physical maturity, or I should say pubic maturity. So the Gemara says, v'ad sheyakiv zakan atachton. Tani Rabbi Chia ad sheyakiv atara. Okay, until there's hair that literally surrounds the atara. So the Gemara says, Kias Rav Dimi Amar hakafas gid v'lo hakafas beitzim. Okay, so I'll say, so what's interesting about this, by the way, is a tremendous level of specificity regarding pubic hair over here, right? Right. So again, the Gemara says it's not testicular hair, but rather again it's pubic hair that surrounds again the male member. So we'll say, I want to just point out over here, right? First of all, you will not get tested on this information, right? So I'll say, so I just want to point out something interesting. You wonder to yourself, really a lot of information over here. So I'll say, so just understand, this is very reminiscent of the Gemaras that talked about execution. What in general, right, when it comes to a beis and executing people, so I'll say, what's the general approach? We don't want to do it. And therefore, again, we will make it as difficult as possible for a beis din to execute someone. When you see this level of specificity regarding pubic hair, what's the takeaway message? There's a musar for everything, right? What's the takeaway message for this level of specificity? They don't want to do it. So I say, if you're getting into this, that now we're making chakiris in pubic hair. I know we're going to eat breakfast in just a moment, so we're not going to right. We're making chakiris in this, right? We're making chakiris. What that shows you is the system does not want to execute this kid. And therefore, again, we will essentially make it as procedurally difficult as possible before execution. That's the takeaway over here. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Chisda, Katan sheholid ein beno nasa ben sora mora. The Gemara says, by the way, if a katan fathers a child, that offspring cannot become a ben sora umora. How do you know this? Shneimar kia leish ben velo leben ben. So what I say, interestingly enough, because the pasuk says Kia leish. Ish means what? An adult. If an adult fathers a child, that child can become a ben sora or a mora. But at the end of the day, if a child fathers a child, a minor fathers a child, ultimately, again, that child cannot become a ben sora or a mora. To which the Gemara says, "Hi, mi ba'ile l'chid Rav Yehuda Rav." But 1 second, we need that phrase for Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rav. What Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Rav said to us, Imkein le'makra kie ben leish. Pasuk could have just said, if a man will have a child, or if a ben will lead to an ish. My kie leish ben. Why does it phrase it as if a man will have a child, kie leish ben, as opposed to ben ish? Shma mina l'chid Rav Chisda. Ultimately, I teach Salach of Rav Chisda that if a child, right, quote unquote, the child fathers a child, that offspring can become ben sora mora. I ve'ema kule lahachi huda asa. But maybe the entire pasuk comes to teach us this halacha. Imkei neimakra ben ish. Could have said it in the shortened form of ben ish. My leish ben. Ultimately, again, what does it come to teach us? Ish ben. Ultimately, again, the Gemara says, Tarti. We can learn out both of these halachas, right? Number one, halacha l'maisa, that again, halacha l'maisa, that it has to be a child, right? Halacha l'maisa about halachas concerning the pubic hair, that's number one. And the other halacha, that if a child fathers a child, that son also is not subject to the halachos concerning ben sora umora. So I will say, so we're going to stop over here for today, but I'll just say interesting. So I don't want to launch into the whole ben sora umora thing, because Emir Hashem will see this on in future dapim, but I just want to point out an interesting connection over here, right? If you notice, Rabbi Elazar ben Horkinus, what was he lamenting? When he was on his deathbed, what was he lamenting? He was lamenting the rolled Sefer Torah, right? He was lamenting the fact that he had so much to give, so much potential that remained unrealized. And it's incredible because Ben Sora Umora is almost like the opposite of that. Ben Sora Umora is, we're nervous about the potential that will be realized. Right? Ben Sora Umora, the Lashon of the Gemara is Nidon al Shem Sofo. He is executed because of what he will become. So Ben Sora Umora, we're concerned about the potential he will realize. And that potential is negative and detrimental to the greater society. So Elazar ben Horkinus is lamenting unrealized potential, and Ben Sora Umora is executed because of potentially realized potential. It's incredible how much this daf is focused on potential, negative potential, positive potential, Ben Sora Mora, negative potential, Rebbe Elazar ben Horkonos, lamenting, positive, unrealized positive potential, and incredible Yisod, because this tied into the way we ended Shabbos. Right? How did we end Shabbos together? What did we speak about as we took a little, right? Lo yeh mishakelo, right? About the need, the greatest fear in life of miscarrying your potential. The greatest fear in life of leaving this world as a rolled up Sefer Torah. Each of us possesses so much incredible potential. Each of us is that rolled up Sefer Torah. Even the Ben Sora Mora. Ben Sora Mora, we're going to see, he could change his ways. He could choose to go and realize his potential in dramatically different ways. But the goal ultimately, again, is to make sure, you see, when you corrupt your potential enough that chas v'shalom, you put yourself on a certain negative trajectory. But we have to be so careful on one hand not to corrupt our potential and not to live a life of unrealized potential. So we'll stop over here for today. A lot more to say on these dapim, but I mean, we won't get ahead of ourselves. Shkayach, everyone.